Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. If you love getting straight to the core of complex topics, you're in the right place. Today we're jumping right into a fascinating and super relevant subject, the ethics of public speaking, specifically viewed through a Christian perspective. Usually, whether you're presenting in a boardroom, teaching a class, or just talking to a community group, we tend to think of public speaking strictly as technique. How to project your voice or how to design a killer slide deck. But the source material we're breaking down today proposes a radically different core premise. It argues that public speaking is fundamentally a moral and ethical act. So let's unpack exactly what that means. Okay, let's dive into this. Grabbing a microphone, it's never just about hitting the right notes technically. It's actually a massive responsibility. Because the foundational concept here is that every single time you take the platform, you are actively shaping how other people think, how they feel, and what they ultimately do. You're influencing human hearts. So it's a moral act. It is not and never can be neutral. To really get the high stakes of this framework, the source material points to how Scripture views speech. Look at this ancient wisdom from Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Just think about the gravity there. Words literally have the power to build people up, spark whole movements, and bring hope, or to tear people down, spread deceit, and cause lasting damage. When you speak, you are wielding an incredibly powerful instrument. And that brings us to what the text calls the iceberg concept. When we watch a phenomenal speaker, we usually just see the tip of the iceberg, right? The hand gestures, the vocal tone, the pacing. But underneath all of that visible stuff is a massive hidden foundation. And that foundation is the character of the speaker. Luke 6:45 points out, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. So before you even touch rhetorical technique, this framework says you've got to check your heart first, because external words are really just a spillover of internal character. Real quick, here is our roadmap for today. First, the power of the tongue. Second, principle 1, truthfulness. Third, principle 2, love of neighbor. Fourth, principle 3, humility. And fifth, rhetoric and character.
All right, section 1, the power of the tongue and the weight of our words.
I know we just touched on this, but it really needs to be said directly to you. Every single time you speak, you are shaping the minds and hearts of your listeners. You aren't just transferring data from your brain into theirs. You are actively molding their perspective of reality. That's a pretty weighty realization, isn't it? Taking the platform means engaging in a highly impactful moral act where you are completely responsible for the influence you project. Moving right along to section 2, principle 1. Truthfulness, focusing on facts and honesty. This first pillar is anchored deep in scriptural wisdom. Ephesians 4:25 commands, "Each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body." So this isn't just a polite suggestion to, not outright lie. It's a really profound call to actively pursue and present the truth because we are all fundamentally connected to one another. But let's be real, being completely truthful up there isn't always easy. It demands transparency and an almost objective dedication to the facts. We're talking diligent research, a commitment to accuracy, and absolutely refusing to cut corners just to make your speech sound a little bit more impressive. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, first, the framework demands presenting facts accurately. Absolutely no distorting statistics or pulling half quotes out of context just to win a point. Second, you have to cite your sources honestly and avoid plagiarism. And third, and honestly this is usually the hardest one, you have to represent opposing views fairly. An ethical speaker doesn't build a weak straw man to knock down. The source material argues you've got to describe the other side's view so fairly that someone who actually holds it would nod and say, "Yep, that is exactly what I believe." Let's jump to section 3, principle 2, love of neighbor, shifting our focus over to the audience. The Apostle Paul paints this amazing picture in 1 Corinthians 13:1. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong." Seriously, you could be the most eloquent, technically flawless speaker on the planet. You could have the sleekest slides, perfect comedic timing, the whole shebang. But according to this framework, if your rhetoric lacks genuine care and love for your listener, it's basically just annoying noise. And applying this requires a massive mindset shift for any speaker. Ethical speaking means you can't just see your audience as a demographic or consumers or targets to maneuver for a personal win. You have to view your listeners as human beings made in God's image. When you actually value your audience that way, your entire approach to persuading them completely changes.
Because of that, this framework draws a very strict line in the sand. On one side, you have ethical communication, persuading through reason and genuine appeal, always aiming for the listener's good. On the other side, unethical manipulation, coercion, and fear tactics designed to bypass their critical thinking. Loving your neighbor means you respect their agency. You lay out the truth as compellingly as you can, for sure, but you never force their hand with emotional manipulation.
All right, Section 4, Principle 3, Humility, the self-awareness of the speaker.
We're anchoring this third principle with Philippians 2:3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility value others above yourselves. You know, public speaking is a massive trap for the ego because the spotlight is literally on you. But this approach demands dropping that selfish ambition completely. Your time on the platform isn't about proving how smart you are. It's entirely about serving the people who gave you their time. So, this requires a really specific posture from the speaker. It's about lowering your ego. Like the old saying goes, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. It's adopting a mindset of absolute service toward everyone in your audience. What does humility actually look like when you're speaking? Well, the text says it first means acknowledging the limits of your own certainty. It is perfectly ethical and actually encouraged to admit when you don't know something or when the data is a little inconclusive. Second, it means ditching those high-pressure rhetorical tricks that force an audience into a corner. And finally, humility requires welcoming dialogue and remaining totally open to correction after you've stepped off the stage. A humble speaker knows they don't have a monopoly on the truth. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Rhetoric and Character Combined, the final synthesis. So here is a crucial realization from the source text. Good rhetoric and good character are not opposing forces. They're not even separate goals. We don't excuse a poorly prepared, sloppy presentation just because the speaker has a good heart. And we definitely shouldn't celebrate a slick, super polished speech if it's rooted in arrogance or deceit. We have to pursue both simultaneously: excellence in our craft and deep integrity in our character. This balance is beautifully summed up in our last piece of scriptural wisdom, Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. That is the ultimate goal right there. The source material argues our communication needs to be gracious, reflecting love and humility, but also seasoned with salt, meaning it should be robust, engaging, impactful, and incredibly well-crafted. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. The very next time you take the platform, whether that's a massive stage, a virtual meeting, or just pitching an idea to your team, ask yourself, what will your words build today? And honestly, what are those words going to reveal about your character? Having people's attention is a profound privilege. Let's make sure we're treating it with the ethical weight it deserves. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.